Okay, good morning, everybody. We'll give it a few minutes before we start our event. Let a few more folks join. Okay. All right, well, let's get going. We have a very tight agenda for the morning, so we'll kick things off. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us at our really first ever news and media thought leaders event for the space. Really excited to welcome you all to the event. We have a great lineup this morning, some great speakers, and we're really excited to get started. So my name is Pat McInerney. I'm a senior partner lead with InfoTrust. I'll be acting as the MC today and kind of popping in and out throughout the session. Since this is a breakfast event, we thought, hey, what conference is really complete without a bottomless cup of coffee, a nice continental breakfast in the lobby of some hotel? We couldn't really replicate that since this is a virtual event. So hopefully all of you who have registered early have received your Uber Eats gift card. So go ahead, if you have not already, buy some coffee, a pastry, maybe a nice healthy sausage, egg and cheese breakfast biscuit from McDonald's. And if you're not a breakfast person, feel free to, of course, use that for lunch or for dinner later on. Okay, so let me advance the slide. So as I mentioned, we have a great agenda for today. Starting off, we'll have Andy Gibson, who's our industry lead for the media and entertainment vertical at InfoTrust. He'll be talking about Google Analytics 4. Then we'll go over to Pam and Ariel to talk about audience activation. Pam will talk about audience activation using Google Cloud, and Ariel will talk about Ads Data Hub and how that plays into audience activation as well. After that, we'll kick it over to the Looker team at Google. Looker is one of Google's new acquisitions, and we're having lots of discussions with a lot of our clients about Looker and its data visualization and its business intelligence capabilities. So Doug and Alina will be talking about what is Looker, what makes it different than other visualization platforms, and they'll be providing a demo as well. And then we'll wrap things up this morning with our own Lucas Long, who's a senior product manager on our Tag Inspector team. Tag Inspector is really a platform that's the foundation of our data governance practice at InfoTrust. Customer data governance is an increasingly important part of any digital strategy. So looking really forward to Lucas's presentation and talking about our new compliance module with Tag Inspector. So we're jam-packed for the next 2 hours. So if you, we're not taking any breaks, but if you need to get up and walk around, refill your coffee cup throughout the morning, feel free to do so. If you do, just crank your computer up so whatever part of the house you're calling in from, you can hear the presentations. We do encourage you to stay for the full 2-hour session. At the end, we'll be sharing a way to receive a free copy of our of the InfoTrust book on analytics maturities titled Crawl, Walk, Run. It's already an Amazon bestseller, so if you don't have a copy of that yet, please stick around so you can claim that copy. A few logistical items before we start the session. There should be a link to the webinar in the chat, so if anyone else from your teams have not joined yet, go ahead and share that out with them, and they can join real time. They won't get the Uber Eats gift card, but that's their fault for not registering early. Questions and answers, there is a Q&A button in the chat session, in the Zoom link. So if you have questions, please put that into the questionnaire box, and we'll try to answer those questions after each session. If we don't get to your question, we will follow up afterward. We'll make sure all questions get a response. Chase from our marketing team will also be monitoring chat, and he'll be posting some items throughout as well. So keep your eyes on that. And yes, this session is being recorded and will be shared at a later date. So if you can't stick around, or if others from your team have not had a chance to join, please let them know. We'll be sharing this out later on. So with that, I think I will turn it over to Andy, and he can start off talking about Google Analytics 4. So Andy, I'll kick it over to you.
Perfect, thank you, Pat. Let me move some things around here. And start my video. All right, cool. So welcome everybody. Hopefully you're enjoying the breakfast that InfoTrust sent you, or not, I guess, sent you a gift card for, and you're ready to hear about some Google Analytics 4 news. So the sessions are being recorded, as Pat said. We'll send that out afterwards. But let's get into the topic. I'm actually going to introduce myself first. So some of you who don't know me, I'll give you a little background. My name is Andy Gibson. I am our industry lead at InfoTrust. I work mainly with news and media publishers. So I have a ton of Google marketing platform experience. I've worked with some of the largest companies and brands in the world to improve their digital analytics. I've consulted on GA360 since it was first called Google Analytics Premium back in, I want to say 2012, 2011, 2012. I'm also an adjunct professor at the University of Cincinnati. So I teach in the Lindner College of Business. And I am very passionate about pit bull advocacy. And I adopted a new American pit bull terrier last month. Her name is Greta. And I will actually share a picture of Greta here with you. So this is little Greta. She's 2. She had 3 puppies and was abandoned. So she is doing very well. Okay, so that's enough of that, Andy. Everyone did not come here to listen to you talk about your dog. So back to the topic. I'm going to introduce Google Analytics 4. So this is the next generation of Google Analytics. I'll walk you through some implications of Google Analytics 4, especially for news and media publishers. I'm also going to talk about why GA4 is perfect for your industry. And then I'm also going to walk you through a dual setup and why we think that's the best option for you at this point. So I will have a couple minutes at the very end to do a Q&A. So if there is any questions as I'm going through, please submit those and I will get to those at the very end. If we don't have time to get to them, I can also follow up via email to answer your questions. All right, so the current state of Google Analytics measurement. Right now, it is honestly a little bit confusing, so I want to lay this out. Universal Analytics is the current version of GA. This is what everyone has been using for the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. With Google Analytics 4, this is going to be the next generation of the Google Analytics platform. So GA4 was previously called App Plus Web. You probably saw that in the interface if you've been in GA in the last, I don't know, 8 months. They renamed it to GA4, so it's now called Google Analytics 4, and this will be the new properties that you can create moving forward. Now, you can create still new UA properties. It's a little tricky. It's easy to do once you figure out how to do it, but no, Google's pushing GA4 very hard because it is the next generation platform. For mobile apps, you also have the concept of Universal Analytics, which most of you are probably using, but then also GA4. So GA4, because it's called App Plus Web, or previously called App Plus Web, it makes it easier to track your different apps and your websites simultaneously and together. And we'll talk about that here in a second. For other internet connected devices, so if you have over-the-top platforms like Roku TV, Apple TV, and some of the others, it is possible to track those with both UA and GA4. You just have to do a little bit more manual work via the measurement protocol, and we can talk about that. So the current version of GA, what everyone has been using, is called Universal Analytics. And the data model for that, for the web, you have the concept of page views and events. For the mobile apps, you have the concept of screen views, which correlate to page views, but on apps, and then also events. And then for other connected devices where you have to actually send via measurement protocol, you still have page views, screen views, and events. So if you're trying to combine the data, let's say for a mobile app and a website, it's going to be a little bit different because there is this concept of page views on web and screen views inside of the app. It's not an easy one-to-one combination if you're trying to aggregate everything. So with GA4, it's an actual unified data model. Everything is an event. So there is no new concept, or there is no more concepts of page views and screen views being separate metrics. Everything is going to be an event. And then with that event, you can send in event names like page view, screen view, or any additional detail that you would like. So it makes it much easier to combine all of that data because you do have the same event-based data model across all of your apps and across your websites as well. This is definitely beneficial for publishers because you have so many different platforms that you guys are on. So again, every hit is going to be an event. So if you're tracking apps and web together, you can have still concepts of page view events and also screen view events. You just know that those are coming from different platforms, but then also any of the other custom events that you're tracking, those would be sent as events as well. And so to your previous version of GA with Universal Analytics, you have custom dimensions, you have content groupings, custom metrics that you can send in as custom data. You still have that concept. It's just everything is attached to an event now. So with every single event that goes through, like a page view event, in this example here, you would also send in additional custom dimensions that would further provide detail on that specific event. When you create GA4 properties, you'll see something like this. And so the concept now with GA4 is you have data streams, and these streams are for the different versions of your platform. So if I'm tracking NewYorkTimes.com, we have a website stream, we have a iOS stream, we have an Android stream, we have an, I don't remember all the platforms that they have, but each platform for your New York Times, that's going to be a data stream. And then that all gets tracked into one property, and that property is going to be a GA4 property. One of the nice things about GA4 is it has a lot of enhanced measurement and automatic measurement built in. So for the web, when you create a GA4 property and you get the tag on the site, there are a lot of things that can be tracked automatically without you actually having to do anything. So for things like page views, scrolling, outbound clicks, site search, file downloads, all of those can be tracked automatically. And that setting is actually in the GA4 property, which is nice. There's nothing that if you're using GTM, you can use auto event tracking to set up some of that, but you actually have to go into GTM and make those updates. In this case, for GA4, you don't have to do that. So a couple of the benefits of tracking app plus web together: you have this true unified app plus web measurement. You have automated event measurement, which is nice. So on the apps, there's also additional events that are captured automatically, and that's super helpful. Not a ton of custom work that needs to be done to get started with. And then cross-platform analysis is also much easier because you're using the same data model and all that data flows into one property. And then these are just some examples of the reporting. You'll notice there's a lot of machine learning insights that are being generated. So GA4 is built with machine learning in mind. And so a lot of this stuff is going to be surfaced as alerts or insights in the interface, which makes it nice. There's a lot of custom reporting that can be done. So you have path analysis, funnel analysis, exploration type reports. These look very similar to Adobe's workspace reports, which are nice. It's very drag and drop friendly. So you can drag and drop metrics and dimensions into the report, and it builds it automatically for you. A couple of things to keep in mind with GA4. So GA4 did come out of beta in October of this year. So while it's out of beta, it's not production ready in our opinion. So there's not feature parity with Universal Analytics properties, especially the GA360 Universal Analytics properties. So a couple things that GA4 properties don't support right now is any type of service level agreement that you currently have with GA60, you don't get that. Integrations, so with other GMP products, Display and Video 360, Search Ads 360, Google Ad Manager, those will be coming, but not all of those are fully supported right now with GA4 properties. Enhanced e-commerce, the full support is not there yet. Sending data via measurement protocol, so via HTTP requests. This is in beta for version 2 of the MP measurement protocol, but it's not publicly available yet. And so what this means is Universal Analytics is still going to be your end-all be-all reporting and analysis tool right now. GA4 is going to be what you can set up to get started with adding historical data and see how that works. Feature parity is going to be coming in 2021 and partially in 2022. So keep that in mind. It's not fully baked yet. And so a lot of this still is subject to change, but hopefully most of the feature parity will come next year. All right, so a couple of the implications for GA4. So let's cover a few here. GA4 is the next generation of Google Analytics, and so Google's sole focus moving forward is going to be on GA4 and not Universal Analytics. So any of those Universal Analytics properties that you have, those most likely will not have any additional features or functionality added to them. Google is going to put all of their development work into the GA4 properties. You also cannot migrate a UA property to GA4. You also can't transfer that historical data from a UA property to a GA4 property. So this means you have to actually create those GA4 properties from scratch, and they only start collecting data the moment that you create those. GA4 tracking on apps requires using the Firebase SDK. And so any custom tracking that you want to do has to be made via the Firebase SDK with the Firebase tracking calls. Firebase's SDK does not currently support Apple TV or Roku OTT platforms. So for those, you actually have to set up GA4's measurement protocol v2 to get that tracking into your GA4 properties. So keep that in mind. And then, of course, GA4 doesn't have feature parity, which we talked about. All right, so a few reasons for why GA4 is perfect for news and media, though. One is we see a lot of issues, and I've mentioned this already, with the data model just being different depending on the platform, web versus app. And this can make it difficult for analysis, for roll-up reporting. This is no longer going to be a thing on GA4. Everything is event-based. Everything is going to use the same data model, which is going to make it much easier. There are many platforms to track, and the setup is time consuming and resource intensive. So GA4 does have a lot of automatic tracking capabilities built into both website and app tracking, as I mentioned. So this will help you get insights quicker and with less work. We also hear a lot of times people, their analytics teams don't have many people, and there's not a ton of time to focus on analysis and insights. So I did mention Google is building pretty sophisticated machine learning into the GA4 platform. So a lot of those alerts and insights are going to be hopefully automated for you. And so you'll be able to see those surfaced very quickly. And then also there's going to be predictive metrics and audiences that are constantly being built into the platform, which is going to help you do better analysis and build more valuable audiences without a lot of upfront work on your end. All right, so the case for a dual setup with GA. When we're talking about a dual setup, we're really talking about dual tagging. So this simply means that you're adding dual tracking to both your sites and your apps. So in this scenario, you'd be tracking your platforms with two versions of Google Analytics. So you have UA is what you're currently using for the most part in your website and your apps, but then you're also going to add a second tag for GA4. So this is going to mean that you're going to be sending data to two separate GA properties on every single platform that you have. One of those is going to be your universal analytics property. That's for your current data and reporting needs. And then one is going to be the GA4 property, and that's going to be for your testing and evaluation and just collecting a lot of that historical data. So why would you want to deploy both? One is because Google recommends it. Two is you're going to be able to test out in GA4 to get a better understanding of how it actually works, what the reports look like, and the actual data model that you see. It's going to simplify your measurement and analysis across platforms. So it'll be good to understand what that looks like. And then the third one is really one of the biggest is you're gathering historical data for when the GA4 properties are fully baked and have feature parity. So with that one, if you start this today, you add GA4 to your websites and apps. It's not that quick, believe me, but you can get started fairly quickly. As soon as you add it, you start collecting data. So when it does come time to switch from GA4 to those from UA properties to GA4, you have as much historical data as possible. And then for the UA properties that you're currently using, nothing changes there. The tags still remain. You don't need to change anything. That's all good. All of your reporting and dashboarding is coming from that. So our recommendation is definitely to set up dual tagging. So if you have questions on that, you can reach out to us and we can let you know what that looks like. It is quite a bit of work when it comes to especially the apps because you have to use the Firebase SDK and any custom data that you want to send in, it's a little bit nuanced, I'll say. So keep that in mind. It's not something easy where you tell an analyst, hey, go turn this on and it's turned on. There's some development work that actually needs to happen to get that. But yeah, that's our recommendation. Get started with dual tagging. And if you have questions on it, reach out to us. We can help you get started and we can help you with that prep work. So that was about it for what I wanted to cover today. I have a few links in here if you have questions on GA4 to some of the Google documentation. If it makes sense to test out GA4 and dual tag, we suggest going ahead and creating those new GA4 properties, set up those data streams and get those inside of your website and your apps. And then you can decide if you need to do any additional custom tracking to get up and running.
Andy, you had a question about how long it takes to deploy GA4?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really depends on what you're talking about when you're talking about deploying. So how many apps do you have? How many websites do you have? Are you needing to do any custom tracking? So are you just setting up the bare minimum or do you need to send in a bunch of custom data as well? to get up and running, especially on the website, if you have GTM already, that is a matter of minutes. It's usually pretty easy to utilize the data layer, what's already set up in there, and then in GTM go in and create the necessary tags to get that tracking set up. For the apps, because it's you have to use the Firebase SDK, you actually have to go into the apps, and your development team has to put in Firebase, has to point the data in the right place. And so there's some work that needs to be done there. Generally, I would say our recommendation would be to start with a pilot site and app, so you can go ahead and figure out how long it's going to take for yourself. I would suggest it would be a couple months, give or take, depending on how many that you're looking at.
Got it. And then, so if we do a dual tagging strategy, how long do you recommend enterprises run it in dual fashion?
Yeah, our recommendation is as soon as possible. So it's not pressing. Google hasn't given anybody a time when they have to switch from UA to GA4 properties, though that time will be coming. My guess is it'll be coming towards the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. Don't quote me on that. Timelines are going to obviously change because it is a new product and there's a lot of balls in the air. But I would suggest prioritizing this to get this as soon as possible so that you do have as much historical data. One of the complications is because you can't migrate from a UA property to a GA4 property. You have to start from scratch. It's best to do that as soon as you can.
Got it. So I think that touches on the next question is, will universal analytics eventually go away completely? Sounds like next year we think it's going to be time to.
So go away completely, depending on what you mean by that. The properties aren't going to get deleted, but they will stop collecting data. So the answer is sort of yes. You won't be able to send data via universal analytics properties anymore, but you will still have access to those properties for historical data.
Great. And then one other thing you mentioned was there's more predictive capabilities for GA4. Mm-hmm. Can you touch a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so there's going to be a number of metrics that Google is building into GA4 based on machine learning. And they're going to be predictive metrics. So especially for like e-commerce companies, anything related to lifetime value that's forward looking and not like just a summation of all of the total purchases that you made. There's also engagement metrics that are based on prediction. So Google is using their machine learning to figure out, based off of people's previous engagement, they can predict how engaged someone is going to be over time in the future. Google hasn't released everything yet, so they're going to continue to build in that predictive piece via machine learning. They don't have a list of everything yet, so we're anticipating that even more is going to be coming.
Okay, great. I think we have time for one more question. So it's asked, can we use GA4 on Google Newsstand channel in the mobile app, tracking to unify with website traffic?
I don't think so. I'm not too familiar with the Google Newsstand. I'm assuming it's kind of like an Apple News. The tracking's generally pretty limited on those platforms because you don't own those platforms. Ideally, when we're talking about tracking these platforms together, these are own platforms that you own. So mobile apps that you own, OTT apps that you own, and websites that you own. Anytime that you are putting your content on another platform that someone else owns, that introduces a lot of complications because they can always say, no, we're not going to add any code for you.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. Well, great job, Andy.
Cool.
I think that takes us right to the to your time slot. So great time management on your part.
Yeah, I was worried. There was a lot.
Well done. So thank you, Andy. And next we'll turn over to, I think building on that predictive component that we talked about, our next session about audience activation with Google Cloud and audience activation via Ads Data Hub with Pam and Ariel. I think that will build more on that topic. So Pam, hopefully you are on, or you're.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. I will go ahead and stop my camera and let you take over.
Okay, great. Good morning. Can I get confirmation from that you're able to see my screen?
Yep, we can see it, Pam.
Okay, excellent. Good morning, everyone. Like Pat had said, welcome to our session on advanced audience activation using Google Cloud Platform and Ads Data Hub. Before we dive into our agenda, we'll take a moment to introduce ourselves. My name is Pam Castricone. I lead the data science team here at InfoTrust. We work with some of the largest global brands and companies, helping them build data-driven solutions. So my interests lie in statistics, predictive analytics, and machine learning. Outside of InfoTrust, I'm also an adjunct at the University of Cincinnati's Lindner College of Business, and I'm also a Google Cloud Platform certified data engineer. So Ariel, let me pass it to you.
Thanks, Pam. I'm a lead consultant here, and I specialize in audiences. So my job here is to help all of businesses reach their KPIs by finding the correct users to advertise just at the right time. I'm currently pursuing a Master in Science and Analytics from Georgia Tech. I am Google Marketing Platform certified. And when I'm not working, I typically can be found hiking around the mountains of Seattle, where I'm located.
Great. So let's go over the agenda for today's session. So first, we'll begin with an overview of what we mean by audience strategy. But we'll really focus our time on Google Cloud Platform and the capabilities there, as well as Ads Data Hub and the capabilities and use cases there. So beginning with audience strategy, what we mean when we say audience strategy is this idea of using your data, leveraging the power of your data to segment your users so that you can serve them with the most relevant content. So basically, this is a way of improving your advertising performance through greater efficiency, which is really just reducing waste, right? Not serving the right messaging at the right time to the right people, and not the wrong people at the wrong time. So the way that we think about this is that all users exist on this continuum from, at one extreme, there are some users that no matter how they're targeted, the messaging that's put to them, they are never going to convert, they're never going to engage. So they are at one extreme. At the other extreme, we have people that are so engaged, will convert, they don't need messaging to help them do that. But my belief is that the vast majority of people exist somewhere in the middle along that spectrum. And so audience strategy is a way, and the techniques that we'll talk about are a way of how do we understand our users and how do we group them so that we can reach the right people with the right messagings and encourage them or nudge them through our targeted messaging to engage or convert. So before we get into our more advanced topics, we did just want to touch on the typical ways that audiences are built. And I expect that many of you are familiar with these and are likely using them in your organizations right now. So both Google Analytics as well as the Google Ad platforms have out-of-the-box audience capabilities. So from a GA perspective, you can build segments and then push those segments into the ad platforms for creating audiences. So those are often built based on the demographics, interests, and affinity data, as well as based on on-site behavior. So what type of content did users engage with, whether it was clicks or viewing videos or just the pages that were viewed. From the advertising platform perspective, there's also a lot of built-in capabilities, whether that's building audiences based on attract floodlights, again, demographics and affinities, as well as lookalike audiences. And so what I mean by that is Google is able to leverage their AI capabilities to basically take a known audience that you have, a target audience that performs very well for you, and basically go out and find other users that are unknown to you and unknown to your brand, but those unknown users actually resemble your target audience. So that's a very commonly used technique. is by going out and finding new users who look like your existing user base. And then finally through first-party data import. So taking an export from your CRM, for example, uploading that into your ad platform and building an audience based off of it. So just to be clear, like this, we view this as kind of the building blocks for more advanced techniques, but you know, not what we'll spend our time today focused on. So one of the reasons that we like to talk about advanced audiences with news and media companies is because they're uniquely positioned to leverage audiences, I think, more fully than maybe companies in other verticals or industries. And that's because they can use audience strategy both as publishers and as advertisers. So with our discussion today of Google Cloud Platform and Ads Data Hub, from a Google Cloud perspective, we'll focus on better user insights that those drive better audience performance, which in turn drives higher revenue, and that can be used from both a publisher and an advertiser perspective. And then Ariel will focus on how better advertising insights from Ads Data Hub can then drive better audience performance and higher revenue. So let's begin with a high-level overview of Google Cloud. Google Cloud Platform is Google's suite of cloud computing services. So there are dozens of products that exist within Google Cloud. There are a lot of benefits in terms of security. It's fully managed. The embedded AI and ML capabilities. Frankly, we could spend days talking about Google Cloud, but for the purposes of this session, we are going to focus on just those services that are most relevant for audience activation. And the big one that we'll be focused on today is BigQuery. BigQuery is an enterprise data warehouse that's part of Google Cloud. So there are a lot of benefits for using it. In my role, especially as the analysis type work I've done, what I really like about it is that it supports massive data sets, so you can analyze terabytes of data, and it's fast and it's scalable. So the reason BigQuery will be so central to our conversation today is because of the integration that exists between Google Analytics 360 and BigQuery. So I would say right off the bat, if you don't have this set up already, you'll hear it from us a few times today, like set this up. It really opens the door for more advanced applications of your data. So what you get when you set up the integration is that Analytics 360 will export to BigQuery the complete unsampled hit level data set that's collected by analytics. So once you have this, it opens the door for integrations with other sources, whether that's a CRM or a CDP, a customer data platform. And then you can also build on that. We'll talk about audiences today, but our team also does a lot in terms of modeling, whether that's propensity to convert or customer lifetime value, those types of applications, as well as opportunities for site personalization. So like I had said, the integration between GA360 and BigQuery, and then also the integrations with the other ad platforms can really give you just this breadth of data that you can use to take your audience strategy to the next level. So what does that next level look like? So these are just an example, some examples of the types of audiences that you can build and how the progression of how they can get more advanced based on first the breadth of data that you're using, as well as, and we'll talk about this in a moment, the techniques that you use for creating those audiences. And so the reason I want to call this out is because you can see at first we start kind of simple with looking at behavior in terms of depth and frequency, content, topics that had come up when we talked about kind of typical audiences and ways that they can be activated on. But then as we continue to enrich that data, across, either through integrations with other systems or just more custom tracking on your site, we can, build on your existing audience strategy in a way to make it more advanced. And so the kind of second piece of this that makes it advanced is, well, what are the rules that we use for creating these audiences? How is it actually being done? And so what we recommend, especially if your organization is new to using these types of more advanced techniques, is to take advantage of what's called clustering. So clustering is a machine learning technique that is used to group data points. And so the idea is that the algorithm can analyze, vast quantities of data, and it can uncover similarities among your different data points across all these different dimensions that you have, and then create groups or clusters of them that are similar to each other, but also, importantly, different from the other clusters that get created. And so the reason that this is a commonly used technique, and the reason that we recommend it, is because it really does, it takes you to that next level, but it also simplifies the analysis process. Because this type of algorithm works at scale, it can consider so many more dimensions, so much more breadth of data, like we've been talking about, than an analyst on your team would be able to do manually. So that's the first piece, is that it can just consider more and at greater scale than an analyst can do on their own. And it's able to leverage the power of those other data sets that you have. So by combining kind of the breadth of data as well as a more advanced clustering technique, those are kind of the two pieces that can help your organization move toward more advanced audience strategy. So how to do this? So again, if your org is new to these types of techniques, what we would recommend for you is to get started with a new capability of BigQuery called BigQuery ML. So BigQuery ML is a feature that lets you create and execute machine learning models directly in BigQuery. And what's really kind of the huge innovation here, I would say, is the fact that you can use SQL queries, which many analysts are already familiar with and are used to, well versed in through their work. It lowers the barrier to entry because it eliminates that need for learning a new programming language to do this type of machine learning work. So really the way we see it is that it democratizes machine learning and empowers more people in your organization to do this type of work. So that's the first piece. It really lowers the barrier of entry. Second, that because BigQuery has its own machine learning capabilities built in, it really simplifies the process or the kind of data science flow or kind of process that needs to be followed to create a model. So, before something like BigQuery ML existed, you would have your data in a data warehouse. You would need to read that data into some sort of environment where you could build your models and analyze it. And then you'd have to push the results of that analysis, maybe back into your data warehouse or into some other platform where you could activate on it. BigQuery ML, eliminates the need for that. And so it does just speed up the amount of time for model development because, your data gets exported from GA360 right into BigQuery. You can build your models in BigQuery, save the output from them, and then push that right into your ad platforms for activation. So I do think it's helpful to provide an overview of the different platforms in play and how they work together for advanced audience activation. So starting here over at the left-hand side, definitely starting with GA360, but then optionally you can widen your analytics data with CRM or CDP. So pushing that data into BigQuery and integrating if necessary. But from there, moving toward actually clustering and building those audiences. So like we said, BigQuery ML is a great choice, especially if you're new and you want to stand up a proof of concept very quickly. But that's not to say that other machine learning languages that you probably have heard of, such as Python or R, those can be used as well. So you do have the option there in what works for your team. So in this stage, you would build your clusters, group all of your users into their audiences, and then from there, the paths diverge when it comes to activation. So on one hand, we do, what we typically stand up is a pipeline in Google Cloud that will run these clusters automatically, so that they're always being updated as users' behavior and data changes. So those clusters stay up to date and then get pushed into Google Analytics 360 and then into GMP for activation. As well as, we also emphasize the side of how do we take this analysis, share it with the organization, and empower more people to uncover insights through it. And so to do that, we lean on the power of dashboarding, whether that's through Looker, which you'll be learning more about later today, or through Google's dashboarding tool called Data Studio. And then finally, just to kind of summarize the whole process here and how to take your existing audience strategy and make it more advanced. Again, the first piece is kind of identifying the available data that you have and integrating it if necessary. So, you have your GA360 tracking already in place. You have your custom data that you're collecting, perhaps about your content or your authors, having that data in place. And then, if you have other user level data that you want to add to that, taking that, running your clustering algorithm against it to identify what those groups are, importing those clusters into GA360, and then activating against them. So customizing your messaging to your different clusters, and very importantly, measuring the lift. So what we typically recommend there is running a split test, dividing your users into a control and experimental group so that you can, in an unbiased way, measure the performance of your audience created from your cluster compared to what you had been using previously as a baseline. So with that, let me pass it to Ariel to talk more about Ads Data Hub.
Awesome, thank you, Pam. So the first question I typically hear is, what is Ads Data Hub? Anybody who's heard of Ads Data Hub has typically heard of it described as a privacy-centric data warehouse. What this means is that you, the advertiser, can run analysis using your business data against the advertising data that Google Ads has. And this is all of their advertising platforms. So this is YouTube, this is DV360, Campaign Manager, everything that you can do there. So how does ADH actually work? Pam talked a lot about BigQuery. ADH works based off of BigQuery as well. So the first step is your business needs to set up a BigQuery owned project that you guys own. That's going to be connected to your Ads Data Hub instance. From there, Google already has an Ads Data Hub instance set up. This is essentially another BigQuery owned project. This project has all of their Google Ads data. What you're going to then be doing is writing queries. Again, these are standard SQL queries, so you likely have an analyst who already knows this, or it'll be a lower barrier to entry. You're going to write queries against this Ads Data Hub data set using the information in your BigQuery. Every result that you get is going to be sent back to your business-owned BigQuery data set. So there's a couple things with this that are great to know. Google doesn't have access to anything beyond the project information that you're including in your specific queries. So they cannot see everything in your BigQuery projects or anything else you have in Google. So that's really good to know. And then when you are querying data for Ads Data Hub, there are some privacy restrictions. This is where that privacy-centric warehouse comes in. So while you can query and look at user information to understand and group users to build audiences and run analysis, you can't actually export that data out at the user level. It's going to be exported at an aggregate level, or you're going to build the audience and cluster those users together to then advertise to them. So that's where we kind of keep that privacy-centric realm where you can do analysis looking at those user IDs, but you will never actually see the user IDs on the outside. So if you advance one, this slide is really similar to what Pam just walked through. What's new here, or what's a little bit different, is the Ads Data Hub piece. So once you get to that BigQuery, once you have your data there, whether it's from a database or Google Analytics, that's where you're starting to connect with Ads Data Hub. Again, Google's advertising data already lives in Ads Data Hub. All you're doing is querying against it to get deeper insights and look at more information. Once you have that data, it's sent back to your business-owned BigQuery instance, and then you can continue moving forward. So you can run analysis, you can take it to the next level and you run analysis in Python or R, or you can use the output to visualize it or send it back to a platform like Google Analytics. So there's a couple different reasons of why you would use Ads Data Hub. Most people that use advertising understand that you can already get a lot of information in Google Ads platforms. But Ads Data Hub lets you go a level or two deeper into this information. So you can look at campaigns, audiences, floodlights, creatives, anything that you've set up. This really allows you to start unlocking questions that come up. So understanding some of the overlap in audiences and users. How many people are seeing multiple of your campaigns? That typically leads to the question of how frequently are people actually seeing your campaigns, especially if there's overlap in your audience. It also gives you the ability to join more of your first-party data. So if you are using a CDP or a CRM, or you have a bunch of information in a data lake, you can start to join this information with what you have in ADH and run more enhanced analysis against your advertising data. The second benefit of ADH is looking at attribution. A common question I hear from organizations is, what does the user journey look like? While for some people, they might be thinking about through their website or their app, that question also applies to advertising. How are users going between campaigns? Are they going between campaigns? Are they seeing multiple? Ads Data Hub can help answer some of these questions and look at some of these questions. And you can add your own data or Google Analytics data to enhance that customer journey overall. So now you're not just looking at advertising and you're not just looking at your website, you're looking at a more holistic view of your customer. The second bullet under attribution there is looking beyond the first and last click model. These are two models typically set up within any of the Google Ads platforms. With ADH, you can start looking at those more data-driven models. If you're familiar with Google Analytics, you might be familiar with data-driven attribution, which is a feature within Google Analytics. ADH has a similar concept, and they also have a couple other attribution methods built in. So those are ways to help assign credit to some of those campaigns that wouldn't be first or last. So maybe they don't typically get a conversion value. You can help understand the impact of all those individual campaigns. And then there's two more benefits. We've talked a lot about audiences. ADH can help with audiences. So you take the power of all of the information that you have from advertising, and you can build an audience around that. Again, you can enhance that using any other first-party data that you have. The activation piece from ADH is even more simplistic than some of the other platforms because ADH connects directly with your Google Ads platforms, whether that's Google Ads or DV360, and you can share the audiences as soon as they've been created back to those platforms. So you don't have to go through a Google Analytics intermediate step there. That makes your activation time a little bit quicker. And then the final piece there is advanced analysis and modeling. Pam talked a little bit about how Google Cloud can do a lot of this. ADH also opens this ability, especially because the data is being imported back into BigQuery. And once the data is in BigQuery, you've just unlocked all of the potential for any additional modeling you might want to do. So ADH at a high level seems kind of clear, but there's still things that might be a little bit fuzzy. So I wanted to address some of the questions that ADH can help answer. These are common questions that I've heard from organizations, and this is kind of where ADH comes to play. So understanding how users who have viewed a specific campaign are interacting on your website. Are they reaching a KPI? Are users overlapping between 2 different audiences or 3 different audiences or even campaigns? What advertisements and pages on your website are registered or logged in users interacting with? How does that compare to those who might not be logged in? How are known users, how are their habits with advertising different from those who don't know? Do they see more ads? Do they engage with more ads or view videos longer than others? What does the customer journey look like? All the way from the first ad impression to a conversion, whatever the conversion means for your organization. And then what kind of attribution model helps you get a more holistic view on the campaigns that you're running? So with that, I want to talk through 2 different use cases with ADH. So this first one here starts with a user seeing a brand awareness campaign on YouTube. After they see the campaign, they navigate away, they don't go to your website, they don't click. Later, the user's on a different site and they see a different ad. This was run through DV360. From that ad, they click through to your website. Maybe they watch a video and get 50% of the way through. Maybe you consider that a conversion on your side. All of this is good information, and this is information that if you have floodlights set up, you might be able to see in the platform. Where ADH comes in is understanding the users who both viewed that brand awareness and that DV360 campaign and completed the website KPI. What does that actually look like? How many users completed all of those steps? Are users who are engaged more likely to complete your conversions? So that means, does that person who engaged with that DV360 ad, are they more likely to view that video and get to the conversion? Or is the brand awareness person, that YouTube campaign, more likely to convert? And then how does that user journey look like? So this is a pretty simple case here, but what happens if you take out one of those 2 steps? Does it change? Is the user less likely to complete a conversion? The second use case is a little bit more advanced. The second use case brings in your first-party data. So this might be a CDP, it might be a CRM, it might be any other information that you have and you own. In this case, a user arrives on the website. Again, you have this CDP set up, you have this data all stored and all connected already. Maybe they browse a couple articles, maybe they spend about 5 minutes on the website. You've already defined these as KPIs. From there, you run an advertising campaign to this known user. So then you want to analyze the insights. How does this known user actually engage with the advertisements? How does that compare to a user that you don't know? Can you use that information to change this unknown user into a known user? And then from there, building on audiences, can you create a more targeted audience using that ADH data and your first party data? Can you use geolocation, interests, affinity groups? Adding in data from your CDP, maybe using age groups to help target those users, and then again, directly sharing that information back with the advertising platforms. So these two use cases are pretty high level, but I think they give you a good idea of what you can do with ADH and how you can instantly take advantage of it. So with that, Pam and I have covered a lot of information. We've talked about how you might be setting up audiences today, doing it through Google Analytics or one of the advertising platforms. We've talked about how you can take that to the next level by using Google Cloud, using BigQuery ML, or using any other technique. We also touched on Ads Data Hub, how you can use Ads Data Hub to enhance what you're doing for advertising today. So we wanted to give tips on how you actually get started. I think we've touched on all of these in our conversation, but we'll give you a summary here. So the first one is to make sure you have some form of tracking installed on your website. Because we are looking at BigQuery, Google Analytics is a natural go-to for us. And Google Analytics 360 has that integration built in. The next step is to integrate GA360 with BigQuery and make sure Ads Data Hub is integrated with BigQuery and your advertising platforms. From there, if you have first-party data, think about adding that to BigQuery or Google Cloud so that you can join that for future projects. Everything we've talked about here today is achievable, and we'd love to answer any questions that you guys have for us.
Thanks, Ariel and Pam. We do have a couple questions. So the first question is, I'm not sure which of you this is aimed at, but does GA4 release affect how we use ADH or Google Cloud Platform?
I guess I can start from a Google Cloud perspective. So, I mean, the short answer is yes. GA4 represents a fundamental change to the tracking model that Google Analytics uses for understanding how users are engaging across websites and apps. So there definitely will be a change with the migration to GA4, but that's not to say that it's bad. It's just different. So kind of the fundamental and kind of a lot of the underlying concepts do translate, but like Andy had touched on, there are a lot of changes with GA4, and so that will need to be accounted for and kind of how you're integrating data and how you're using the data, because it is a very any analyst who's taking this on needs to have an understanding of how data is collected, what's being tracked, and that can change under GA4. So I was kind of a high-level answer from the Google Cloud perspective in the GA export, but Ariel, do you want to touch on it from an Ads Data Hub perspective?
Yeah, so the Ads Data Hub side of things doesn't change unless you're integrating with GA4. So everything Pam just said I would say is applicable to Ads Data Hub as well. It's going to change the way that you're thinking about the data that's being collected and how you're going to connect that to what you're doing for advertising.
Okay, great. So question on the amount of data. So you both kind of mentioned being able to bring in first-party data for Ads Data Hub and BigQuery. Is it still powerful with just GA data, or do you actually really need to take advantage of first-party data and other data sources to make BigQuery and ADH really start to kind of hum?
Sure, and again, I can start from a Google Cloud perspective. So I would say that we did make an effort to call out those integrations with the other platforms as optional. So we did that because we didn't want to give the impression that, well, if you're not ready for that yet, then there's no point in getting started. So, with GA360, you get a lot of data out of the box, and we kind of gloss over it, right, because it's out of the box. But you do get a lot of data that is collected automatically, and then also not to kind of undervalue what you can get from custom dimensions, metrics, event tracking that's specific to your website or app. That can provide a tremendous amount of value as well, especially for news and media organizations who are so content driven. So by being able to have better granularity around the content, the authors, the categories, subcategories, tags, all of that type of information can really enrich this analysis without needing integration with another tool. So it's certainly an optional extra step, and we see it as, if I'm not sure if it was covered earlier, but we talk a lot about analytics maturity and advancing the way that you use data. Integrations with other platforms is just a more mature step in the process. So please don't see it as a barrier to getting started. There's still a lot of value, even if you don't have that in place just yet.
Yeah, and I would absolutely echo that for Ads Data Hub. And I would actually, for Ads Data Hub, there's a lot of power in the data that is in Ads Data Hub alone. So even if you don't take Ads Data Hub to the level of connecting to Google Analytics or any additional first-party data, there is still value in Ads Data Hub. I would see that in that analytics maturity model. I would see just using Ads Data Hub as that crawl step. And when you start to add in the Google Analytics data, that's when you get to the walk, and your first-party data is more of that run stage. So there's definitely value in just taking advantage of Ads Data Hub as it is out of the box per se.
Great. Love the crawl, walk, run reference. Makes it very easy to digest. And then I think we have time for one last question. I think this kind of builds on it. These both seem like very advanced, scientific. You're obviously both brilliant people. How hard is it for a company to get up and running on using both these tools and start to kind of crawl? Is this a 6-month, 12-month process, or can a relatively scrappy team start doing something today with it?
Yeah, it's a great question, Pat. So, the way it's really hard, without knowing your organization, to put a timeline on it. But what I do really hope is a takeaway from the Google Cloud side of this is that BigQuery ML really does lower the barrier to entry for machine learning techniques, for organizations to take on. An analyst with SQL skills is all that you really need to get started once you have the platforms in place. So that does shorten the development time. It shortens the skill sets and the team that's needed to get started. It really empowers, it makes this possible for more people in the organization. So I also don't want the takeaway to be like, oh, my team doesn't have these skills, like we're not going to be there for a long time. I see really the power of BigQuery ML is that the innovation behind it is that it's really opened this up and democratized machine learning for far more people.
Yes, and I would say something similar for Ads Data Hub. It is also query-based, so it's also SQL-based. So in the same respect, you need an analyst who can understand it, or someone who's willing to get their hands dirty and try it out. Google and the internet in general have done a great job of starting to provide basic queries to get anybody who's new in Ads Data Hub to help you kind of dip your toe in the water. So you can start running some of these basic questions that we talked about almost right out of the box, as long as you have access to everything.
Awesome. Well, that was fantastic. Thank you both very much for your time. I certainly learned a lot. So we talked about 2 really robust, powerful platforms with BigQuery and Ads Data Hub. So now time to talk about another really powerful Google platform called Looker. So I'd like to invite Doug and Elena to join us, and they will take us through Google's new exciting product, Looker.
Got it. Thanks, Pat. Thanks, everyone, for the opportunity to spend a few minutes here introducing you to Looker. My name is Doug Bursack. I'm a head of sales here at Looker. I've been with the company for just about 6 years. Looker as a company has been around for 7.5. So, and I have with me today, Elena.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for having us. I am Elena Rowell. I'm on Looker's product marketing team and have been with the company for about 7 years. So I've got a rare one that's got Doug beat here. And I'm going to just get my screen share up and going so we can get started. Sorry, I'm just having some quick technical difficulties.
Yep. So Elena, while you pull it up, I'll just kind of lay out. So for the purposes of the next, let's say 20 to 30 minutes, I'm going to go through kind of the generic positioning of Looker, how we got into the market and some of the problems we solve. And then I'm going to talk about a customer case study, Comcast. That's an account I personally managed. I started at Looker as an enterprise salesperson and then got promoted. So I was actually managing the Comcast account, and I'll be able to drill into some of the use cases there from a media standpoint and what they're doing. They're using Looker in quite a few different use cases in 2 of the media units, Effective TV, which is their in-house Comcast media team, and then Freewheel Media, which is their external kind of third-party media inventory solution or organization. And then Elena is going to step through Looker for the Google Marketing Platform demonstration. Did we lose Elena?
Sorry, I'm having some major
share issue.
Tech meltdown here. Give me 30 more seconds, and I think I'll have this, and it will be well worth the wait. I can promise everybody that. All righty, here we go.
Yeah. So first, I'm going to go through and kind of explain Looker. Essentially, within Google, there's quite a few different analytical products, predominantly Data Studio, and then Looker. Looker was just acquired last year by the organization. We just started getting integrated this year. And the reason Google bought Looker was that to have Looker be the predominant cloud-native enterprise BI platform, and that's a pretty important word, platform, for enabling real-time access to data. And one of the reasons is Looker handles heterogeneous data sets and data types, but also works on any data platform or cloud platform. It's not just a Google native application. It works in a Microsoft Azure cloud environment. It can work in an Amazon Redshift environment, and then it can connect to any type of database. So just stepping into what, kind of a Looker 101. When I had an opportunity to join Looker back in 2014. I joined in actually 2015. And the thing that struck me, I was a little hesitant to join because I wasn't really grasping the concept back then of, the concept of these data lakes and the powerful databases and what was happening in the BI world. And then once I started kind of just listening to the market and what was happening, I recognized as customers were transitioning how they were managing their data to the cloud database environments like Amazon Redshift, Microsoft Azure, Google BigQuery, that they were self-creating a problem that they were not going to know they were going to have until 6 to 9 months later by trying to take the tools that they had in their enterprise already and trying to connect them and take advantage of their investment in the data warehouse technologies. And that's where Looker comes in. Looker helps customers. It's purpose-built to work on these powerful cloud databases and then allow customers basically at an application layer define and join any type of data sets, right? The traditional way of transforming the data and normalizing the data in the database is now replaced with aggregating data easily in an extract and load format into these databases, and then doing transformations on the fly with an application layer. And the reason that becomes important is that customers, the purpose around them consolidating the data was so that they could take some level of action on top of the data, right? Rather than just doing simple static reporting or giving self-service capability for people to create their own reports. The data has a level of meaning and a level of action and insights that has to happen. And that's kind of the core reasons why Google made the investment. And for anyone following, it was a $2.6 billion investment in bringing Looker into the into the Google portfolio. So what makes all this possible is the concept of a platform. Remember on the first slide, I kind of air quoted that the platform is a pretty important part of this whole equation. We've been positioning this platform conversation since I had joined here at Looker back in 2015 and even before that. And if you think about a platform, some of you may already be familiar with platforms, right? A platform by its nature, right? A software platform. It's a tool that allows you to seamlessly deliver, let's say, a UI or an interface to go do what you have to do for that particular purpose, right? In this case, BI. But then how to do some other things, right? So when you look at Looker, right? Looker's a web application. It's a modular 100% web app designed to sit on top of these modern databases and give you this ability to use our modern BI interface and be able to slice and dice any type of data and be able to get insights in real time. So it's true self-service to the near real-time data that's sitting in the data lake without any data extraction. We do that with some of the software development practices that we have built into the application, things like version control, and integration to security protocols like single sign-on make it real easy for you to repurpose the data that you have and then be able to activate other types of experiences, right? So with a platform, not only are you able to power and use the platform with its UI, but you should be able to use that UI in a modular way to go integrate insights to the other applications that your users are using every day. It could be a Salesforce application that they're using. It could be a Zendesk support application. So the whole idea here is when you're integrating the data from your source applications on the bottom of this slide into a data lake, Looker allows you to then purposefully join that data on the fly for some meaningful transactions and then be able to close the loop and integrate those insights back into the application so that your teams have full 360-degree view of what's going on in your enterprise back around a customer into the application that your users are using every day. And then to take it a step further, you can build custom applications or even power data-driven workflows like data science workflows, application, media inventory management workflows with Looker as well, right? So that's the true meaning of a platform. And that's what we were bringing to the marketplace, when I joined Looker back in 2015. So I want to kind of compare and contrast this to what Data Studio brings to the table, some of you may be familiar with, versus Looker. And this is just a high-level snapshot of the two tools, right? Data Studio is a very good tool for any type of desktop-oriented workflows where an end user, a single end user, wants to do some level of spreadsheet data analysis or ad hoc reports at the desktop level. Where Looker kind of comes in and extends the value is Looker's all about, again, that enterprise approach to allowing you to activate and build different types of data experiences, whether it's with the Looker UI or with the components of the Looker UI into your other applications. It's a much different paradigm than some of the current tools that are in the marketplace that require you to move data into their environment. Like tools like a Power BI and Tableau are very good at what they do, but they're minimizing the value of the investment in a BigQuery or a Redshift or a Microsoft Azure because you're taking the data out of those tools and then doing some level of reporting on top of that. So you lose that real-time connectivity and that ability to operationalize the data. I'm going to walk through a couple of these. Here are some of the customers that Looker is using. When I joined Looker, we had less than 100 customers. Today, we have over 3,000 customers, right? And that's pretty I mean, pretty impressive globally, right, in terms of the growth. And it was because these customers were making the investment. They recognized that managing data for analytical purposes was better to put into these data lakes and these cloud environments. And then they quickly recognized that, the current tools they had in their portfolio were not purpose built to take advantage of those data lakes. And we're somewhat unapologetic to that fact, right? In that Looker was born in the cloud, right? As a 7-year-old company, we were purpose built to sit on top of these data lakes and help customers activate and operationalize their large, complex data sets in a much faster way. When I started with Comcast, this is a quote here from Jim Forsyth. He is part of the data science product team for Comcast Cable. That was the first business unit that kind of came on board with Looker that I worked with. So Jim powers 1,000 different product owners across Comcast globally with Looker. Now, if you think about Comcast is a very large Tableau account. And what we're seeing in the market is customers for net new use cases where they're taking advantage of the new way of managing data are now using Looker on top of that, right? So they do use Tableau in their environment. They have an enterprise license. But they saw that Looker would help them reduce the amount of time it took to get access to that data, right? There's no need to do data prep, right? Looker seamlessly gives you access to all the data that's in the data lake. And essentially what they were doing at Comcast is they have a massive Hadoop environment. They were extracting the data out of that master data warehouse into an analytical workload, into a Teradata database, and then into Tableau server, and then out to the desktop for some reporting and analyzing, right? So it became problematic when you wanted to make changes or, his team needed to be, more agile in accessing the data. So what he did was, rather than go to the Teradata environment, he took the data and put it into an Amazon S3 environment and just layered Looker on top of that. And as you see in the quote here, he's basically improved the access from time to decision dramatically. Hold on a second. My screen went into quiet mode here.
Well, it's perfect timing because this is actually where I will take over. It seems like the tech gods are not shining down on us today, Doug.
Yeah.
So that was a fantastic overview of Looker in general. And now I'm going to dig in a little bit more on Looker for Google Marketing Platform specifically. So we, as Doug has mentioned, we were super fortunate to be acquired by Google Cloud. And what that has also given us, though, is really great access to the people at Google Marketing Platform. And so we've started to really partner with the teams there to think about how Looker can specifically serve their customers. So when we started talking to them, there were really 3 key pain points that we heard that we really wanted to wrap our solution around. The first was that people were struggling to get insights and data exploration out to a larger audience, and it was really just limited to a few who could either directly hit the database or had that power user access to something like a Google Analytics. Additionally, first-party data is only getting more important, and that Google and Google Marketing Platform data is only a piece of the picture that people wanted to start to tie together. And then finally, that customers were struggling to go from the insights that they found into action. So how do they activate the data? Because an insight without an action is, great, but not as valuable as it could be. And so that's really what we have built. And the solution that we've built for Google Marketing Platform offers this broad access to data and analytics. So it's both dashboards, but also data exploration. And I'll demo this in a few minutes. It's the ability to connect to all the first-party data. So all of that rich data that's living in your data warehouse is all available through Looker. And so starting to connect the pieces, connect the dots of all the different places where your customers are finding you. And then finally, we've also built in the ability to activate insights from Looker and make sure that you're getting the most out of those. So for a Google Analytics 360 customer, this is what it ends up looking like. Pam mentioned actually the auto load from GA360 into BigQuery. And so we're leveraging that really easy feature there. And then we're putting Looker on top of it and what we call a Looker block, which is basically an out-of-the-box analysis and out-of-the-box data model for this data source. So with that block, there's really 4 chunks of things that you get. First is that we have duplicated the reports that you know and love today within Looker so that everybody can have access to them. So that's our overview, acquisition. I'll pop into these when I demo. Additionally, we heard that people really wanted to be able to do many, many, many touch funnels. So what we call them is as many as you want touch funnels. So for events and also for page pathing. And then we've also built in more advanced analytics that weren't possible in the GA360 console. So things like a custom goal report, campaign impact report, as well as some BQML, BigQuery machine learning propensity scoring. The thing on the left here is also what we're really excited about, and this is this ability to activate insights from Looker back into GA360 using the data import functionality, using that API through Looker. But because this is Looker, and we're not just limited to this, I think, there was a question earlier that was like, is GCP valuable with just GA360? And like, at least from our point of view, the answer is yes. But like the more data you add, the more richness you have. And so from here, if you can start to look at your first party data and either load that into BigQuery as well, or connect that to Looker through a different data warehouse, you can then start to do more and more marketing analytics. And so start to look across your different channels and across your different, customer bases and really start to dig in deeper and understand what the data that you have on your customers is really telling you about them. So one of the customers that is using Looker and using us on their GA360 data is a company called Mercado Libre. So they are an e-commerce company, which at the surface seems like it wouldn't be as helpful for a media company, except that they are operating on such a huge scale that their data actually starts to look a lot more at the scale of a media company. So they are the #1 tech company in South America. They operate in 18 different countries, which you can imagine impacts their properties and all of the different accounts that they have for their GA360 data. They have over 400 million monthly users on their websites, and they also have created over 150 unique Google Analytics fields. So doing analytics on this data was very much, in their words, a petabyte scale problem. So their analytics team started by using the Google Analytics export to BigQuery, and they found that super helpful because they were able to get down to that row level data. They were able to write their SQL queries and really get into the nitty gritty. But what they found is that they had wonderful access to the data, but they really couldn't pass that through to their constituents at the company. And so what they wanted to do is they really just wanted to do more with data. So they wanted to make sure that other people could quickly get the insights that they wanted. So just simple dashboarding. How do we make sure that they have this? Additionally, they wanted to do this idea of like democratizing access to the data. And I think the way that I think about this is like, it's democratizing curiosity and the ability to kind of go like spelunking through your data and really understand your user's flow really fluidly. And then finally, making sure that they did this in a way that all of the metrics were accurate and like across all of those 18 countries and all of the different accounts and the different properties, people were seeing the same definitions of the metrics. And so the first thing that they did was just build out, an explore environment where anybody could look at any of these things. But then they went a step further and they built out what they called their Seller Central. And so what this allows anybody at the company to do, regardless of their technical level, is start at a dashboard, so something like looking at orders, and then just drill in and keep asking deeper and deeper questions and really go deeper and zoom out as they go. So this flexibility to follow your gut is really what they were able to give their internal users access to their GA360 data through Looker and using that BigQuery export. So enough of the slides. I'm going to pop into a demo and see, because seeing is believing. Alrighty, let's hope this goes better than last time. Awesome. Okay. So I always like to start here in our marketplace. So I mentioned that we've created what we call Looker blocks, which are really just out-of-the-box analytics for GA360. We've also created them for Search Ads 360, Campaign Manager, and DV360. Looker is a super flexible and malleable platform, and so we can see in this marketplace that people are using us for all kinds of different analytics, all kinds of data that they're analyzing. It really runs the gamut of what people do with Looker, but we do our best to support them getting off the ground quickly if we know what they're looking at. And the great thing about GA360 is that we do know what that data is going to look like when it comes in. So once you've installed that block, you are automatically out of the box, up and running with these 9 dashboards. So we, as I mentioned at the beginning, we built out the duplicates of what people had in GA. We built out the as many as you want touch funnels, and then those extra little bonus dashboards that really give you that extra touch. So we're just going to start here on this GA360 overview dashboard, though. So this overview dashboard is, as you can imagine, really just meant to give us an idea of what's going on. So we can see the high-level views of our audience, our acquisition, and audience behavior. And so we have hyperlinks up here at the top that will allow us to go and drill into those dashboards specifically. But really what we see in Looker is like this data is alive, and so should your interactions. And so all of these are hitting the raw level or hitting the live data and giving us that raw access. But data is only valuable if it's driving actions. So one of the things that customers really like to do, and one of my actual favorite things that I get here, is this alerting functionality. So we can see here that, on our website, our bounce rate kind of like hovers around 50%. We had a spike over here, and maybe we want to know if it jumps. And so what I can go in is I can hit this alert, I can go to bounce rate, and let's say I want to know if it's greater than 52%. I can have this email or Slack me, and then not the frequency that I want. And then once I save this alert, it can now be followed by other people. So other people at my company can go in and see that this is something that I wanted to know, and maybe now it's something that they want to know. And all of this is really just this idea of like making data more useful and making data more friendly and interactive. So in addition to alerts, I also might want to have this waiting for me every morning, or maybe waiting for my boss every morning. So scheduling data from Looker is also a very popular use case. So I can do this at whatever frequency I want, and then I can send it where I want. So I could have this sent through an email, but also maybe I want this sitting in Google Drive so that I can reference every day what that dashboard looked like, or send it into another, into Slack again. Really, wherever it is that it's helpful for you to have this data, Looker believes that you should be able to have it, and you should be able to have access to that. So from here, I will go and I'm going to jump into this custom goal conversion dashboard. Now, this is one of those analytical workflows that when we went and talked to the GMP teams and really kind of got into customer problems, we started to understand that this was a big problem because in GA360, in order to do an analysis on a goal, you have to create it in GA360, and then you only have it from that point. And so what we wanted to do is basically create a way for people to be able to do analytics on any sort of goal, whether or not you have even created it in GA360, and then definitely if you have created it, being able to look at that retroactively. So we can see here that the goal that we're leveraging here is this add to cart. And as we go down, we can all see all of these different insights on our add to cart goal. So session conversion rate by audience cohort, whatever it may be that we are that we want to understand here. One of the great things here is that we've built in this reverse goal page pathing. So how we know that we wanted people to get to this add to cart, but how did they get there? Because we have all the granularity of the data in BigQuery, Looker can really just go and look at all of this. And so anything that you have, any of the hit level data is available to be analyzed and really sliced and diced and displayed in the way that makes the most sense for the analysis that you're trying to do. Dashboards, however, are only a piece of the puzzle. All of these are super customizable and like very, able to be defined as you want them and moved around. But oftentimes the answer that you need is deeper than a dashboard. So that's where from here we have this ability to go and explore down to that row level data and really start to find our own insights. So what we have here, as soon as this loads, is I've drilled into this tile and it's loading that data for me. And maybe I have this audience trait and I have the different conversions, but I really want to see how this is trending over time. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just quickly going to remove this. And I'm going to remove this. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to add month because I want to see this over time. At which point I will take this and I will pivot it out. And now I can run this. And from that dashboard, I've now quickly gone to seeing this audience trait goal conversion count by month with just a few simple clicks. All right. And now that I have this, and now that I can view this, all of this is really, I can go in as deep as I want. So I can go in here and I can click this and I can go and look at this, whereas it's by month right now. Let's go and look at it by week. And from here, I can go in and say, let's go and look at it by day. Let's go and look at it by hour. Let's go and look at it by channel. So it's very fluid and it's very amenable to understanding the data in the way that like your brain is thinking about it, as opposed to just the way that the data might be structured. So this is kind of the base functionality of Looker that all of our customers know and love. Kind of the X factor things that we built in for this specific block were two things, is that we did build in some lightweight BigQuery machine learning that Pam mentioned, actually, because Looker at its core is really just writing SQL against the data warehouse. We can take advantage of all the unique functionality that's available in things like BigQuery. And so we built in a BigQuery machine learning propensity to act score. And so what I can do is I can pull this up here and I can see that I have my ID and then I have my user propensity score. But maybe I want to, let's say I only want my highest value customers. So let's say I only want people who are more likely than not to convert. And then also, I think maybe like I want to run an ad campaign for people in a specific metro. And so what I can do here is I can add this in as a filter. And let's just take our top metros and let's say Austin. And then I can run this and I can get this list of top metros, client ID, propensity to act score. So now that I have this, this is great. But again, like as we've mentioned, without activation, really what good is this? And so that's where we took this next step and we built in the data import action. And so what I can do is right after I've pulled this, I can go and I can send this directly to Google Analytics 360. And again, from Google Analytics 360, I can take that and I can send it downstream to something like DV360 or into my other ad platforms and, start to leverage this. And so here I'm taking BQML propensity to act scores and loading that in. The other piece though is that like Looker has access to all of my first-party data. So if there are other first-party traits that I want to take and I want to add in to this, and I want to, enrich my GA instance with, those are also available from Looker and also available to send in through this activation path. So I will stop there. And that was your whirlwind tour of Looker. I will switch off my screen share and thank you guys so much. And if there are any questions, we'd be super happy to answer them.
Great, thanks, Elena. So I had a question to start off with. You're talking about propensity to act. Going back to what Pam was talking about with lowering the barrier of entry to sort of machine learning. Does this complement what is already existing within BigQuery, and how does it really play with it in a better way?
So I think that's a great question because so many of the things that were mentioned previous were just like perfect setups for this, because it really does lower the barrier. And so with BQML, you only need to know SQL, and then Looker then removes that one step more, so that the person who's written SQL can, who's written the propensity to act score can write that in SQL, and then they can go and give it to people who don't even know SQL, and they can go and use those scores. So it's a really great complement, and really allows you to take advantage of that BigQuery machine learning functionality even more.
Awesome. Another question. Looker seems much more sophisticated than Google Data Studio. I think Doug touched on some of those differences, but can you talk a little bit more about kind of the differences between the two?
Yeah, I think, at a high level, Looker is an enterprise data enterprise data platform. We were, built from the ground up to give that security, all of the data exploration, all of that, give people access to the raw power of the data warehouse. And Data Studio is a great tool for the quick and dirty visualization. I have this spreadsheet, I have this data, and I need to understand it quickly. It's a great use case for Data Studio, but it just lacks that enterprise oomph. Doug has turned his video on, which makes me think that he has also something to add here.
Yeah, one of the key differences is Data Studio works with the Google BigQuery solution only, right? Looker, for enterprises that have data in other areas, are leveraging Looker, right? So as I indicated earlier, Looker works and can be deployed in any cloud environment. Looker can host in a GCP environment, in an AWS environment, or customers can self-host the application. That's one key difference. And then the extension piece, when I talked about the platform and moving beyond just the standard UI, customers can go build net new applications on top of Looker because we have a modular web app. So we give customers access to an SDK, access to what's known as an extension framework, so that they can do more sophisticated things in a matter of days versus weeks or years with very little development skill.
Awesome. So again, that lowering the barrier, democratizing the ability to visualize and derive business intelligence is all part of the platform.
Yes.
Great. One last question, right up your alley, Doug, I think. How does pricing work with Looker? So it sounds like someone's ready to buy.
Yeah, so Looker is an annual subscription model, regardless of how it's deployed, whether it's Looker hosted or what we call customer hosted, where a customer takes it into their own environment. So it's an annual subscription. That annual subscription consists of a platform fee. That platform fee gives you access to all the capability within Looker. And then you have different ways in which you would license users. We have a developer user that would do development work and go build stuff on top of Looker for people to go consume. You have the concept of power users, and then the concept of viewer users, right? So there's 3 user types. So you have a platform, user types, and then there are a couple of add-ons based upon how the customers want to use it, right? So that's essentially the model. It's a software as a service.
Okay, great. I'm sure folks can reach out to you with more detailed questions as needed.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, great. Thank you both so much. That was great. Learned a lot from that session. And we will definitely keep an eye on Looker and how it progresses going forward. So very excited to do some more projects with you guys. So that takes us to our, thanks, Lena. Thanks, Doug. That takes us to our last session. So very excited to have Lucas Long join us from Barcelona, Spain. Lucas is our product manager on our Tag Inspector platform. And as we all probably know, customer data governance is becoming increasingly important. So Lucas is going to take us through our new compliance module on Tag Inspector. So Lucas, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Pat. And yeah, thank you, everyone. Hope everyone's enjoying breakfast. As Pat mentioned, my name is Lucas. I'm our product manager for Tag Inspector. And I know a lot of the discussion thus far this morning has been around a lot of the really cool things that you can do for activation of data. So phenomenal visualization, being able to build on top of that with Looker, and then some of the other ways in which to activate data that you have collected. But it's important to always remember those fundamentals. So the foundation of that. We use this crawl, walk, run type of a model. And what we're really looking at when we talk about governance is that initial crawl stage. So building the foundation, getting your complete, accurate, and compliant data collection in order to be able to drive those different business insights. So connecting that to the goal of data governance, which is really where Tag Inspector comes in, is that our goal is to ensure complete, compliant, and efficient data collection in order to drive business decisions and then meet customer expectations. So what does this mean? Just to unpack it a little bit. So complete data is making sure that you have accurate information. It's really your data collection architecture, making sure that all of the different digital platforms that are in use are getting all of the data points that they need to drive those different business outcomes, and making sure that that is always happening. The second piece here, compliance, and that's what Pat was alluding to and what we'll focus a lot on here in our quick session today, is that with the changing ecosystem around privacy and changing customer expectations, as well as regulations and technical restrictions, that compliant data collection piece becomes extremely, extremely important. So understanding what information is being collected, what platforms are collecting that information, and making sure that all of that is in line with company policies, as well as regulatory policies and requirements. The third piece here is around efficient data collection, which for news and media is extremely, extremely important. So oftentimes what we'll see on especially media websites is a ton of advertising, marketing technology, a ton of proliferation of tags, and different platforms that are loading. So this isn't always deployed in the most efficient manner, which can cause user experience problems as well as performance problems. So how can we really focus on that data collection architecture, our tagging architecture on the website, in order to be able to make sure that all of that is happening in the most efficient way possible as well, so that users are still able to have a wonderful experience. So how we focus on this and what we use to be able to address these issues is Tag Inspector. So Tag Inspector is our tag auditing and monitoring platform, and it's really meant to address those three different areas. I'll take you through a little quick overview of exactly how that happens. So the first thing that's necessary for any of those areas of data governance is to be able to have global tag visibility. So simply answering questions such as what tags are loading across their website, how are those tags being loaded, where are they, what cookies are being set, again, for those regulatory and compliance purposes. So the first thing that we do is we'll run scans across all pages of any website in question. And the outputs here allow you to answer those questions that we just talked about. So what platforms are loading, where are they, how are they being introduced? That visual that you see there on the left-hand side, we call that our tag hierarchy. And that's showing that how tags are loading. Especially on news and media websites, there has been a huge proliferation of piggybacking, or third parties that are injecting and loading in other third parties. Now, these can cause a huge risk when it comes to privacy and compliance, specifically for any users that maybe require consent prior to this behavior to be happening. But in addition to that, when you have different platforms bringing all their friends to the proverbial party that is your website, it can cause a lot of weight and a lot of activity that has to happen within the browser, which is going to have negative performance impacts. And that's really where we see a lot of, I guess, some of the impacts here. And I apologize. I was just notified that my screen was not sharing. So hopefully at this point now, we can actually see what it is that I'm talking about. But again, high level, first, global tag visibility, what tags are loading, where, and then how. The next thing that we really want to focus on, because it's extremely important around governance for news and media, is what I was mentioning there around efficient data collection. So how this works. So answering questions such as what tags are impacting user experience, how much are tags impacting those page or load times, and then what is the performance cost of that data collection architecture in your marketing and advertising technology stack. That third question is something that is extremely, extremely important. What you really want to be doing is evaluating that performance cost versus that business value that different platforms are generating for the organization. And so with Tag Inspector, what we do is we can run what we call a performance analysis. So what the performance analysis does is we run scans across all the pages of any website, and we actually will block different tags and different platforms from executing. We'll run those scans across each of those different conditional situations to be able to generate a massive data set around page performance in each of those different conditions. So we can then run some models on that data set and quantify the performance impact of each individual platform. Now, this really highlights cases where third parties are piggybacking and loading in others, because those issues compound themselves. And when you simulate the removal of one that is really far upstream, so maybe something that is loading directly from the page source, but then is piggybacking in and loading in a number of additional platforms, that's where all those issues really combine, and we see a lot of those really big performance issues. So within Tag Inspector, running this performance analysis allows us to really understand and clean up that efficient part of the overall data governance equation. The next thing that's really important that is really growing as far as the requirements go, and it's what Pat was alluding to, is around that compliant data collection. So answering high-level questions around, is my website compliant with brand new privacy regulations? What are the potential impacts of some of the new technical restrictions on my website and my different marketing advertising activities? So at the more technical, lower level, questions that we're trying to answer here are, what tags are loading? Are all of these authorized? Have they all been vetted? Do we have relationships with each of these different vendors? Or is there maybe unauthorized piggybacking occurring that is opening me up to compliance risk? What data is being collected for each of those platforms? Do any of those data points fall into the classifications of personal information, for example, for CCPA, personal data for GDPR, or if my audience is in Europe, are there potential implications for the cookies that are being set due to e-privacy restrictions and things of that nature? So answering those questions, what cookies are set, what data is being collected, and then being able to evaluate that. So to solve these issues, what we have created and introduced is our privacy and compliance module within Tag Inspector. And that's what we're looking at here. So what this does is it uses that same technology as the scans to give us that full global visibility and understand what platforms are loading. But we're then aggregating that information across any and all websites that you maybe are operating within your organization. We're providing that in a format that makes it really easy to go through that compliance type of an evaluation, those governance evaluations. So what we're looking at here is an overall look at what we call an inventory. So a look at what are the unique platforms that are loading, just clearly and succinctly listed out. And then for any of these, or for this type of an output, I can also filter. So I can look for a particular property, a particular market. There's even the ability here where we can simulate different consent conditions of users or logged in, logged out states. So we can filter those options and then see what is that tag behavior for each of those conditions. I can then dig into the specifics for an individual platform. So I can look at what are the websites within my organization that a particular platform, maybe it's unauthorized. What are the sites where that is loading? So I can dig in and understand, okay, I need to remove this, or this is a compliance risk. I can also dig into the individual data points that are being collected, and we'll even provide for unique anonymous data points, what we call a compliance risk level. So that compliance risk level is going to show you, based upon some different characteristics of the data, such as if it's being collected by multiple platforms, if it's a unique value that's being placed in a cookie, the relationship between platforms that are collecting like data. All of those things go in to that evaluation and are able to kick out that rating for you to understand and help you evaluate those compliance risks. Once you really work through that workflow, you can define your allowed tag policy, or what's approved, what's not approved within the organization, defining that within the tool, and then really set up automated monitoring and alerting to any of those privacy compliance risks that are being introduced on the website on an ongoing basis. One final thing to note in here, specific with some of the platforms that have policies and restrictions around PII, or personally identifiable information, such as maybe a user's email being collected. There's also functionality there within the tool to automate the monitoring of any collection of PII or any passing of that information by tags or third parties on your websites. So we have predefined categories of PII. We're automatically looking for that nature of data to be passed in live information, in live tag behavior on the website, flagging that, showing you where that's happening, what PII is being collected, and then providing context you can remediate any of those issues. The final piece, and it was the first part of our overall data governance goals, is around helping you to ensure complete data collection. So number one, going in, helping you to define what are the requirements for my organization, what are the data needs? So what data needs to be collected by each platform in order to be able to drive those business insights and business decisions. Once we're able to define that and we have an overall measurement plan and a measurement architecture, we're able to translate that into a tool such as Tag Inspector and start answering questions around, are required tags always executing? Are required data points always being collected for specific user actions, for a user subscribing on the website? Is my analytics and a few of my different media platforms collecting that information all the time? And that's where, for automated monitoring within Tag Inspector, we're able to, one, show you at that really granular level from the live environment, the tags executing, the data that's being collected on user actions, page loads, all of that, and then able to translate those requirements into the tool itself to be able to provide automated, always-on, real-time monitoring. So as soon as you have any kind of a data collection outage, you can be notified and alerted of that to be able to make sure that you are always collecting all of the data across all of your platforms that are necessary for the business. So I know that was super fast. I only had about 15, 20 minutes here, but wanted to leave a few minutes here at the end to open it up for any questions that maybe come in.
So Lucas, I'll borrow a question from some of the other sessions as well. Talk about the onboarding process for getting a customer data governance practice in place. How hard is it? How long does it take? What are the steps, et cetera?
Yeah, no, excellent question. When we think about a data governance practice, again, we're thinking about those three different areas. So complete data, compliant data, and then efficient. And then how I like to think about it is in three stages. So at first, we're trying to assess. We're assessing what are the needs for the individual organization and assessing what is our current kind of, where are we right now? Oftentimes that's going to translate into a tag audit, which within Tag Inspector, you can get set up and you can have tag audit outputs from scans in as little as a couple of hours. So that's going to allow you to really assess what is my current state. Now, from that current state, we're then going to need to determine, again, based upon which area of governance that we're looking at, what are the actions that need to be taken. So if it's compliance, and we're using the privacy and compliance module, you'll have that data surfaced within a few hours, and then it's going through and starting to implement and take action on that information. Depending upon the complexity of the organization, depending upon how many tags you have, that process can take a little while, or it can be quite efficient. But then once you work through that, then that third stage is maintenance and monitoring. And Tag Inspector makes it really easy to translate those requirements that you're defining within those first couple of pages, or sorry, stages, to the third stage for that automation of the monitoring. So in general, these fundamentals, they're not easy by any means, but as long as you go into it with that framework in mind, you're able to keep everything really organized, get onboarded with the tool, and really create a roadmap for those activities that you're needing to do pretty efficiently.
Awesome. Great. And we have one more question here. You mentioned for news and media specifically, the performance aspect of it. Can you talk about what are some of the more popular use cases or the most popular use case for TI for the news and media vertical?
Yeah, I would say kind of specifically what you're alluding to there around the performance piece is one of the really big ones for this particular vertical, just because of the importance of performance for these different websites and the lack of many effective tools out on the market to be able to quantify the impact of individual tags and provide that information in a digestible format to be able to associate it with platforms. It really comes down to having that quantifiable information to have that discussion around performance cost versus business value. I think that's something that our news and media clients find extremely valuable within the Tag Inspector platform.
Awesome. Well, great. Appreciate the presentation, Lucas. Awesome job as always. Very efficient as well, talking about performance and efficiency. That was a very efficient proposal or presentation, so nice work.
Thank you.
Great. So that wraps up our day here. So I want to try and just do a quick recap of what we heard in the past 2 hours. So starting off with Andy on GA4, we talked about the benefits of GA4, the single data model, automated event measurement, easier cross-platform analysis, and start dual tagging right now if you have not already started. The audience session with Pam and Ariel talked about a great first step with clustering. It's a scaled machine learning audience widening capability via the BigQuery ML. Talked about democratizing machine learning with that lower barrier to entry that came up a couple times. With ADH, it's a nice privacy-centric way to do user analysis. We talked about the enhanced analysis with first-party data, although we don't need first-party data, but that is a capability to better understand the user journey across advertising, seeing audience overlap, etc. Attribution is easier to do, and faster activation with creating audiences directly in ADH and sharing that back to GA. Doug and Elena with the Looker team. Again, Looker is a dashboard plus data exploration. Elena used some great terms, democratizing curiosity and spelunkering for insights. Anytime you can use the word spelunkering in a presentation or meeting, that's a great day. So thank you, Elena, for that word. Lucas talked about complete compliant data, efficient data collection, really understanding the compliance risk of your data, and using the Tag Inspector tool for automated ongoing monitoring, including PII. So hopefully that wrapped up the day for the most part. Did want to do a couple last minute housekeeping items. So let me share my screen here quickly. First of all, want to make sure everyone can claim a free Tag Inspector scan of their website. You can get that through this link, which Chase is I think Chase has popped that into the chat already. So please go through and do that and see what the Tag Inspector scan looks like. Crawl, Walk, Run. This is our Amazon best-selling book. So you can go to this link here and claim your own free copy, paperback or Kindle version. And then we also have a ton of resources on our website. Here's a link to it. So all the things we talked about today and more, please go check that out. Please reach out if you have any questions to our team. Really appreciate all the attendees for taking the 2 hours this morning. Thanks to the Looker team for presenting and the rest of our InfoTrust presenters as well. Hope you all have a great rest of the week and have a great holiday season, and we'll talk to you all next time. That's all she wrote.